everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of All About African Violets. What a week it's been. I had no idea what it would really be like to produce a podcast. I would like to say thank you to everyone who watched and to everyone who spread the word. In this first week alone, there have been more than 600 hits on allaboutafricanviolets.com. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your wonderful comments on the blog and comments on iTunes and on Ravelry, which is an online knitting and crocheting community. I know that the podcast has been passed along to a number of online groups. I think the AV Brat Pack and also the Garden Webs Forum. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you will continue to watch. I thought I would share with you some of the comments that you might not have seen that were that I got, through via email. I mean, obviously, I'm very lucky. I have a lot of friends and crazy family who watched, and they're very supportive, and that's really great. Thank you. But I also got comments from people I don't know, and that's just so exciting. But I got a few, and I thought I'd share them with you. You are just beautiful and thoroughly charming. Well, thank you very much. And you can call me anytime for bail money. Fabulous way to combine the many things you've done. That was awesome. I love the music. Isn't Ted Yoder great? All About African Violets is musically sponsored by Ted Yoder, and you can find his music on his website or on iTunes. And his website is www.tedyoder.com. And then I had a couple of others. One of my friends said, "It's only a little creepy how you haven't aged at all since 1997. I attribute that to good sunscreen and a hat and good genes from my mom. And will you narrate it with an English accent, please?" I'm afraid I'm not very good at that. But I also want to just reassure my family and friends who are watching that you do not have to call me Annie. It's confusing to have all these names. But as I mentioned last week, when I was first online, and I learned to grow African violets online. I like to say that because it's true. I had the benefit of meeting people online who were really knowledgeable and who were so willing to share their information and their knowledge with me as a novice grower. So I met them online. They met me as Annie, and so, like I said, if you are in the African violet world, you probably call me Annie. If you know me in the real world, as opposed to the virtual world, you probably call me Adrienne. And either one is fine with me. I also want to tell you guys that I have 9 plantlets. I went back and forth last week, as I was watching the tape, as I was putting everything together. I'm like, 7, 9, 7, 9. Okay, I have 9 plantlets. Let's just clear that up now. So if I mess that up again, you'll know I have 9. And one of the things that I also want to say to you guys, a few things were brought up in comments and things. I think it's so important to tell you and preface everything probably that I share with you is that I'm sharing what works for me in my conditions, in my growing environment, with the water that comes out of the tap at my house. So I would like to caution you, particularly those of you who are already growing and things seem to be going well for you. If it ain't broke, you do not have to fix it. So, and anything that I might suggest, I would also urge you to take with a grain of salt, because once again, it works for me, it works in my conditions. It could be completely different at your house. Your temperatures could be different, your actual outside temperatures or climate. I learned to grow initially, really grow, in Southern California. And I lived in a town at the edge of the desert, and it was hot all the time, and I mean hot, just to keep the house, livable, not cool, just so that, I and the plants did not expire. The electric bill was like $483 a month. I mean, that's huge. And that wasn't even to keep it cool. But the first club that I was really a member of was the Ventura County African Violet Society. And if any of you guys are watching, hi, I miss you. You're all awesome. What a great group of people. So many people who were really master growers, people with tremendous knowledge and a great willingness to share their knowledge and teach beginners and just have a really good time. Well, I learned to grow in that type of an environment, but the climate at my house, where I lived, which was about 45 minutes due east from the coast, Ventura is right on the Pacific coast, completely different. And it was very common for me to maybe have a plant that just wasn't growing very well. And we had at our club an opportunity table every month. So I would take a plant that wasn't growing very well for me, but it was still healthy, and I would take it to the opportunity table. And someone in Ventura would get it from the opportunity table, and I'd see it at show. And it would be gorgeous because it liked the climate in Ventura better than the climate at my house near the edge of the desert. So, whatever works for you, the light could be different. You might grow under natural light. You might have just a completely different growing setup than I have. So I just want to be sure that I share that with you. And one of the things I wanted to also share with you this week is I had a question actually about fertilizer salts. And in the tips and treasures section, I am going to show you, as promised, how I remove those from the plantlets. But I did write to two of my friends, both of whom are expert growers and very well known in the African violet world. The first one is Diane Miller, and she lives in Southern California, and we've been friends for a long time. And in fact, my very first 4-shelf plant stand I got from Diane, and I still have it, and I still grow plants on it. Diane grows all sizes of plants, but she really is known, or I think of her mostly as a mini and semi grower. And I asked her, I sent her the question, and I said, I mentioned the fertilizer salts that are appearing on the semis I'm growing, but not on the standards. What are your thoughts about this? Do you use a different ratio of fertilizer mix for your minis as opposed to your standards? Now, I asked Diane Miller, and I also asked Joyce Stork. So here's what Diane emailed back to me. She said, I use the same soil and same fertilizer for all. Not enough time to do something different for each type. Diane grows a really lot of plants. If you think about, and now this is important, if you think about the volume of soil a solo cup holds versus a 4-inch pot, there's going to be a buildup of fertilizer much quicker in the little guys. That's why I go crazy trying to repot my minis and semis so often. Ideally, I like to repot them every 3 to 4 months. The minis are also going to use up the nutrients in the small pot much faster. I am always repotting. The little guys don't die on me if they don't get repotted that often, but they are much happier when they do have fresh soil. So this is something that is very important. Now, one of the things that I often have equated this to, if any of you have ever had a fish tank in your home or a couple of sizes of fish tank, then you would know that the one that's the hardest to take care of is the small 15-gallon tank as opposed to the great big 55-gallon tank. And that's the same thing with a standard plant in a 4-inch pot or a mini or semi in a little solo cup. They don't have as much growing area in the small pot, and as Diane said, they use up the nutrients much more quickly, and there's less of them in that small pot. So you do need to repot more often, and I agree with Diane that every 3 to 4 months I think is a great plan for minis and semis. And the other thing that Diane does, and that some of you may do, is she wick waters. Now that's a style of watering, and we'll talk more about watering methods in depth in a future podcast episode. But she says, since I wick water, I use a very light soil with much perlite in it. That's why I spend so much time watering. My minis are on mats and they dry out very quickly, especially at this time of year. It's July. And I also have fans running 24/7, which dries out the mats quickly as well. I have to be very careful about the use of fertilizer in those mats because it can build up rapidly as the water evaporates. I only use about 1/8 of a teaspoon of fertilizer, and I rotate with Super Thrive Eleanor's, I think it's Eleanor's VF11 because it is much weaker than the other types. That's not one I'm familiar with. And Grow More 15-15-15. That's the NPK ratio. I also use plain water after this rotation to prevent too much concentration of fertilizer. And people ask me why I rotate fertilizers, and to that I reply, do you like to eat the same thing every day? My theory is that our plants don't either. And you know, when I was at National this year, I heard a lot about rotation of fertilizer, and this is not something that I have ever done. So I'm interested in learning more about that as well, and I'm going to be asking a few more people and over the next few weeks and see what I can find to share with you about that. Now, the info that I got from Joyce Stork. Now, Joyce is one of the authors of, with her husband Kent Stork, of You Can Grow African Violets. It's a great book. Over on the sidebar on the blog, you will see a link to their book. You can order it directly from the AVSA. It's a great reference. For many years, Joyce and Kent wrote the beginner's column in African Violet magazine, and the book is a compilation of their columns. And it's a great reference, and I recommend it very highly. But Joyce is always much more scientific than I am. And she always, whenever I ask her a violet question, I always learn something new. And this is very interesting, what she wrote me back about the question that I sent her about this fertilizer salt deal. She says, we fertilize our small varieties the same way we do the standards, using it at a rate that is about half of what is recommended on the package. The crud that you are seeing could be caused by the fertilizing that they received before you bought them, since those salts are inside the plant and it takes several weeks for the crud to develop. It doesn't hurt to cut back on fertilizer a little bit though, especially if you've been using the fertilizer at the full rate recommended on the package. And I thought that was very interesting because it never, you know, our society anymore, we're so immediate, everything happens right now, that it did not occur to me that the fertilizer salts buildup that I was seeing could have happened before I even got the plants. So I thought that was really interesting. So thank you, Diane. Thank you, Joyce. And I hope that answers a little bit for you guys on how that happens and why it happens and kind of what to do to avoid it. So moving on to tips and treasures. I was asked to please clarify the term putting down a leaf. So let me tell you that that is a tip, to put down a leaf, because one of my friends left a comment on the blog and said, that sounds, when you put down a leaf, it sounds like something you do to a horse, you know, a sick horse. And I thought, oh no, that's not it. That's not it at all. So to put down a leaf is when you take a leaf from a plant, and most African violets will propagate from a leaf. So you take a leaf from a plant and you will make a fresh cut on the stem, and I cut off the top of the leaf to inhibit further leaf growth, but push the growth down into the stem of the plant that will then hopefully shoot little baby plants up out of the dirt. That's what it means to put down a leaf. You put a leaf down to propagate. So I hope that's a little clearer. And I do know that there are people who are not experienced growers who are watching the podcast. So please feel free, if I use a term that you are not familiar with yet, please leave me a comment on the blog and let me know so that I know what I want things to be clear for you and to help you as you grow and as you learn as a grower. Now, next week, I thought maybe we could talk about some books. I thought that might be interesting for you guys. But in the meantime, one of the things I got in the mail this week, and this is a tip, if you order plants, from any of the commercial growers, they will often then you'll be on their mailing list, and some of them still do hard copy catalogs that they send out in the mail. And I'm on the mailing list at the Violet Showcase, which is in Englewood, Colorado. It's on South Broadway, and I love to go there whenever I visit Colorado because it's like this little storefront, and you go inside and you can't see anything from the outside. You go inside and it's like walking into the secret garden. It's so awesome. It's so beautiful. But they send their violet list. This is their 2012 list. And they also send me their supply catalog. And this is it. I was trying to get to the front page here. They've got like a cover page, and it looks very similar to the one I just showed you, but it just says that it's the growing supplies list. I get a lot of my supplies from them, and I've had great luck with them. I've also gotten plants from them. But before there was before the internet was so prevalent, they've got actually a really nice catalog. You can see that they do have some great, I'm not so good at looking at that and getting it right in the spot where you guys can see it. But they do have some photos of their plants. But back in the day, you used to just get these descriptions and you'd have to wonder, you'd have to read it and think, a semi-double wine red, frilled pansies over dark green, tailored, heart-shaped, pointed foliage, beautifully variegated with pink and tan. So hybridizers use the language really well. That is the description of a plant called vintage wine, and it's a standard, and I've grown it in the past. But so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Sometimes awesome little jewels and tips treasures come in the mail. So now it's about time for us to take a look at what's on the stands. So if you'll hold on for just a moment, I'll be right back. Hi everybody, welcome to my kitchen. Here you see the 9 plants that you normally see on the plant stand. And remember I told you last week that I was going to work on showing you how to take the little rusty stuff off of these. It looks like fertilizer salts. So now I'm not so sure how the camera will zoom, but we shall see how this works. This is Rob's Antique Rose, and I think you can see it a little bit better. The light in my kitchen is actually pretty good. And there's another one that has some on it, and it's this one, I believe. No, it's this one. This is Optimara Little Creek Girl, and you can see if I can get it in there. You can see it looks a little rusty on this leaf, and it's hard to do with one hand, and on this leaf a little bit. So I'm going to work at getting that taken care of. It's very simple. We're just going to rinse them off, and I use Q-tips to just sort of gently tease that rust off of there. And we'll look at the rest of these, and you can see, actually we might as well kind of do our on the stands segment here at the same time. You can see that these are growing. They're definitely growing. This plant right here is one of the standards that I kept. I only kept 2 standards. This one is called Western Moon, and if you see here, kind of get it close there for you. No fertilizer salts on this one. The other standard, not looking so good. This is Witch Doctor, and I did take leaves of this and I put them down to propagate. It's been my experience in the past that you really need 5 leaves for a plantlet to be sturdy and strong enough to grow. That one right now only has 4 leaves. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, so we'll see. And I will be right back here in just a moment. I'm going to reset the camera so that you can see how to do this removal of the little fertilizer salts. Be right back. Okay, everybody. Hi. I don't think you can see me. I've tried to get this as close as I can. That's my sink. That's my kitchen sink. Welcome to my kitchen sink. And here's Rob's Antique Rose. Now, I'm trying to look at this as I'm working here, trying to bring it up where you can see it in the light. There's a little bit of fertilizer salts here, here, and here on this plant. The other modeling that you see here, this is a little bit of stress, and I find this happens, excuse me, in my experience, it happens more with minis and semis. When you take a lot of leaves, strip a lot of leaves off and repot them, smaller plants seem to show that stress in their leaves more often than standards do. That's been my experience. That may not be true for everybody, but that seems to be true for me. Now I'm going to turn the faucet on, so hopefully the sound will still be okay. And this water is lukewarm. It's about room temperature, a little bit warmer. It's, and of course, here in Chicagoland again, it's so hot. And what I'm going to do is just gently kind of use my finger to just get the water's going right in the crown of the plant, so you do want to be sure that we're going to get this cleaned off. So now that it's wet, I've got a Q-tip here that I'm going to get wet on both sides. I'm going to shut the water off so you can hear me better. And I'm just going to kind of gently rub that. I hope you can see that. I'm trying to get in a better spot for you. Just really gently. You can start to see, or I can see it anyway, on the Q-tip, a little bit of the rust coming right off. It's a very gentle process. You don't want to be jamming at it with the Q-tip, just enough to get that off of there. So now we've got a lot of water everywhere else. I'm just going to let that go. Set that one over here on the edge. And on the other plant that I had, this is Optimara Little Creek Girl. I'm going to turn the water back on. Actually, before I do that, let me see if I can show you, if you can see it. Can you see that it's a little bit rusty? Unfortunately, I can't quite tell until I look at the film after it's done. But I hope that you can see that that is a little yellow looking. Here, let me put it next to a Q-tip that is wet but doesn't have any salts on it. Can you see that? Here we go. You can see the difference. This one kind of yellow and the other one still bright white. So that's what we took off the leaves of the other plants. So now we turn the water on again. I'm going to do the same thing with Optimara Little Creek Girl. Now those leaves are dampened, and I'm just going to gently it's just like almost like you're brushing, but you're being very gentle and just sort of working that across. And you can see, if you look closely, the new growth right in the center, everything's looking good there. These were just these little leaves, these 3, that had a little issue with that. So I hope that helps you see how to take care of that. And we'll be back in the sunroom in just a moment. Guys, before I go, I changed my mind and I turned the tape back on. One of the things I want to show you, this is Optimara, this is Rob's Antique Rose, one of the plants that I was working on before. This plant is ready to have a couple of leaves taken off, and I just took one off that was right here. And I'm going to take this one And this one, I have a tendency to pot things a little deep in the pots, and that's probably it's just an old and ingrained habit. But I'm going to take this leaf off. It's time to do that because this plant is starting to shoot out new growth, and those leaves were kind of inhibiting the shape. So now you can see this is looking a little better actually already. And I'm going to dry this off. Sorry, I keep getting out of the frame. It's because of the angle of the camera. I apologize. I got this plant wet, so I'm going to blot it with a paper towel. I'll show you. I'll just grab one because we're in the kitchen. They're right here. And this is just a paper towel. And I'm just going to take this and blot it just gently. It's resting, the leaf is resting on my finger, and I'm getting off those blobs of water that were left. It's kind of like it had a little shower, a little bath, but you don't want to have any water spots on it, even though some of those leaves have Mars. We still don't want them to have water spots at the end of the day. And I'm going to be doing this with a couple of other plants today and doing a little bit of cleanup on their shape and what's going on the shelves. So I will be back. Well, everything, these stands are like little mini greenhouses. I really love that. And this is the way, and let's take a look here. We didn't take a look last week. Almost everything is looking pretty good. Almost all the leaves that I put down have taken, so to speak. And I've already explained the whole part about putting down a leaf. There's one here right in the front, not looking so good. Now I'm balancing that on my finger. This one, it rotted away. It just never quite made it. So that's unfortunate, but that one's gonna go. So that was Buckeye Easy Goer, but it just didn't make it. Sometimes that happens, that one wasn't happy for whatever reason. Sometimes you lose a leaf. And here's the other tray. This one's a little harder to pick up. And pretty much everything is looking pretty good in here. Right down there in the front corner, those are the leaves from Witch Doctor. One of them doesn't look so good, but the one that's facing away from the camera, it doesn't look too bad. So crossing my fingers for that one. But that's a look at what's going on down here on the stands in the basement. Everything pretty much is moving right along. Back upstairs. See you in a minute. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Remember when I said I was learning about the video part of my camera? Well, it's also my film camera. It's not really film, but it's my digital camera that I take photographs with. And I often will, just take it and turn it to get a long shot of something. Never occurred to me that the video wouldn't turn on its side too. So I'm sorry for making you go, whoa, to try to look at it. And the only reason I left it in is that, that leaf had rotted away, and I wanted you to see that. And so there was no going back to refilm that one because I did toss it right afterward. Anyway, things are looking really good down there other than that one leaf. And in the next few weeks or so, eventually we're going to be seeing some little baby plantlets start to poke up out of the dirt, and that's always very exciting when that happens. So we'll keep checking in down there on the stands and you'll have a look. I hope you were able to see. I know that the video was also a little bit dark when I was trying to show you how to remove the rust from the rusty looking fertilizer salts from the plants. But I hope you're able to get an idea of how to do that if you are having that problem, and that you'll know how to take care of it. If you are having that problem, it's worth listening again to the section earlier on under Welcome to My Sunroom, where talked a little bit about what Joyce said and what Diane shared as well. And it's better to get that stuff off sooner rather than later. And it's real easy to do. So now it's time to move on to the next section of the podcast, which is get the bail money ready. You guys, I had no idea that you would enjoy hearing my story last week, as much as I enjoyed telling you about it with my little adventure with the Canadian Border Patrol. And in truth, a couple of my friends said to me, how come you didn't tell us about this? How come we had to hear about it on the podcast? And I'm like, I guess I thought I did tell you already. But I did have somebody ask me, how did you actually get out of there? And I said, well, they, once they said I could go back to my car, I did, and everything was all over everywhere. I have a station wagon. They had flipped down the seat in the back and then flipped up the armrest in the front, and everything was. But I got in the car, the keys were there, and it was they had me pull in to like a parking structure. So I just pulled out of the spot and went on my merry way. I mean, literally, that was all I wanted to do to begin with. So it wasn't hard to get out once they decided, that there was nothing but dirt in the back seat. But I do have an event to share with you today, someplace you might want to go, where you might need to get the bail money ready. Excuse me. So one of the places to look for stuff like this is on the AVSA website. It's avsa.org, and there is an events tab. So if you are a member of an affiliate group, an AVSA affiliate that has a show or a display and sale, or you're sponsoring a judging school, be sure you list it there, because people go there to look for things, in their areas. And on July 14th, 2012, there is a judging school. It is in Milford, Ohio. It is sponsored by the Cincinnati African Violet Society. And it says it's at the Bridgehaven Clubhouse. And the time, I think they got the time wrong, because it says it starts at midnight, but I know it doesn't start at midnight. And there's contact info and everything is there. It's on the website. And so I encourage you, if you're in that area and you have an interest in judging school, that you'd go and check that out on the website and maybe get some more info. And I will tell you that judging school is not always just for judges. My first judging school, when I lived in Southern California, and I was becoming a more serious grower, and I wanted to learn about what the judges look for in a show plant so that I would become a better grower. I wanted to know what they were looking at and looking for in my plants at show. So the Southern California African Violet Council used to sponsor judging school every year. So I went. I figured, what have I got to lose? I'll just go and I'll learn some info. You can always go and just audit the class. You don't have to take the test. So I went and I was there for the class, and I really had no intention of taking the test. And everybody said, Annie, just take the test. And I'm like, well, all right, why not? I'll take the test. So I passed the test. And the next thing I knew, I had my judge's card. And then the next thing I knew, I was invited to judge a show. And when you're a judge, you save this stuff, because it's important when you get to be a senior judge. You need to prove all the shows you've judged. But this is the schedule from the very first show that I judged. And it was the Pomona Valley African Violet Society, which sadly is no longer in existence. But it was their golden anniversary. The theme of the show was Violets, Past and Present. And they were celebrating their 50th anniversary from 1952 to 2002. And it was March 15th, 2002 in Laverne, California. Pomona Valley. I had a wonderful time. I judged with two advanced and master, I think they were both advanced judges at the time. And when you are a student judge, you must judge on a panel. Panels are a panel of 3 people. And one of those members of the panel can be a student judge. So it was my very first experience, and it was wonderful. And I was invited to judge many more times throughout that first year. I was very lucky in that respect. And it just helped me learn more and more and more about these plants that we love so much. So I highly recommend that. If there's a judging school near you, go and sit in at least, and maybe even take the test. You never know, you might like it. Which leads us now to the last section of the podcast, Keep Moving Forward. I've been trying to move forward all week long. I have a stress fracture on my right foot, And thankfully, it is not serious. I just have to wear a charming surgical shoe. When I'm walking around outside in the house, I can wear my clogs as long as I have a rigid sole on. It's not painful. And thankfully, because I only have 9 plantlets right now, I haven't had to spend too much time on my feet working with them. But it's certainly impeded my getting around this week. But I hope that that everybody else is doing really well. I hope wherever you are that you are keeping cool if you are in a hot area. It has been another record-breaking week of heat here in the Chicagoland area. And thankfully today, it's Sunday, the 8th of July, it finally has broken. The heat wave has broken, and it's such a blessed relief. It's been so hot. So if it's hot where you are, drink a lot of water, make sure the plants have enough water, and try to keep cool. Thank you for coming and watching this week. Please tell your friends. I hope you'll come back next week, and I hope that you've enjoyed this time we spent together. I hope that everything is great for you in the coming week. I hope that your days are filled with all the things you love. Good growing, and I'll see you next time.